We are ready when you are.
Good evening. Thank you all. My name is Jeff LeGros with the Montachusett Regional Planning Commission. And my coworker here, Ryan Doherty, is also a planner with MRPC. And we're here tonight to present the public info and input forum on the town of Templeton's hazard mitigation update. We're going to go through a couple of minor housekeeping items. I'm going to walk through the agenda just so that everybody listening here and on Zoom knows what we're going to be covering tonight and how the presentation is going to go. And then with that, I'll move into a presentation that I have prepared here for you that will give you some background on what a hazard mitigation plan is and what we're planning to do here with the town of Templeton over the next year to a year and a half of this planning process for updating the hazard mitigation plan. Tonight's meeting, this public forum, is part of the initial kickoff phase. We held a kickoff meeting with the hazard mitigation team here for the town of Templeton. We have a large and active team, and we're really pleased with the group of people that are participating in this process. And then the other part of that team, of course, is the public, and we're looking for public input. So we kicked off this planning process and with the hazard mitigation planning team, and now we're presenting it to the public here so that we can let you know what we're doing, what we're working on, and we can ask for your input on the process. Whether you have that input now, whether you provide it through the public survey that we're also going to be announcing and releasing tonight, or whether you follow up with an email and additional information, or reach out to the Emergency Management Director, Rich Curtis, to set up a kind of a meeting or an interview with the MRPC planning team to discuss things and information and thoughts and concerns that you might have related to hazard mitigation. So all of those things are important. We welcome your input tonight. We want you to know about what we're doing, and we welcome your input throughout the process. So with that, I'll move into the housekeeping matters here. I'm just going to walk through the agenda. This is the same agenda that was posted online through the town's website, so you can look at it if you needed to later and refer back. The first part of tonight's presentation is going to be the project purpose and overview. That's a little bit of what I've been talking about now. I mentioned the hazard mitigation planning working group, and that consists of several members, town employees, town staff, board members, and interested stakeholders that have come together, and in particular, members of the emergency management and CERT team that are participating in that plan with that planning team. They're going to guide the process and provide us with most of the information we need. They're going to do the hard work behind the scenes, and we're going to meet with them about every 2 months throughout the process to really talk about different phases of the plan and work through that together as a planning team. The second part of the team is MRPC, of course. We're the consultant that's been hired to do the plan. We are your regional planner or regional planning commission, I should say. And we serve 23 towns from Air all the way out along the Route 2 corridor, all the way out to Athol and everything in between. Really, it's the Route 2 corridors, or what's known as the Montachusett region. So we serve Templeton. We love working with Templeton. And we're really pleased to be doing this plan with the town. So again, myself, Jeff LeGros, my partner here, Ryan Doherty, who will be helping to work on this project, and then the rest of our planning team. In particular, I'd like to mention our executive director, Glenn Eaton, Templeton resident. He's pleased to be that MRPC is working on this, and Karen Chapman, our planning and community development director there at MRPC. So we have a good team. We're excited about working on it. A little bit of a background about the project. What is a hazard mitigation plan and why is it important? Well, a hazard mitigation plan is required by FEMA, and the town needs to have a current active plan updated every 5 years. Having a current and active plan then makes the town eligible for certain hazard reimbursements, emergency management, or disaster recovery funds and things like that that FEMA administers. Without a plan in place, the town's not eligible for those funds, as well as they would be eligible for other FEMA hazard mitigation planning grants that you're only eligible for if you have an active and current plan. So yes, money and funding is important, but that's not the only reason. Having an active current plan is really important, because the most important thing for hazard mitigation is preparedness, and being prepared for any disaster, any natural hazard event that might occur, things like hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding. Being prepared for those and having a plan in place is critically important. We've seen flooding and a lot of disasters. I'll go through some of them in the presentation, but the ice storm of 2008 hit Templeton really hard. Recent flooding that we just saw that really hit Leominster and Fitchburg hard, but was really an issue throughout the entire region, including Templeton. And with the Millers River and the Otter River running through town, flooding can sometimes be a concern. So those are the types of things that are incorporated into a plan. And we're going to go through and we're going to update that information from the previous plan. The previous plan was done in 2016 and expired in 2021. At around that same time, the town of Templeton also conducted a municipal vulnerability preparedness study, or a community resilience building plan. That plan was done again in 2021, and it covers some of the same types of information, but focuses more on climate resiliency, whereas hazard mitigation planning encompasses all hazards, even those that aren't influenced by the climate. So those are what is incorporated into a plan. Those are the reasons why having a plan is important. And this is why we're here tonight, to kick this off and get this plan started. I mentioned public participation is extremely important, and public, as part of this process, we're going to have several hazard mitigation planning team meetings, and we're going to hold this input meeting, and we encourage the public to participate throughout. We're releasing a public survey, as I mentioned. Please take the survey. We'll give the information for that later on. And that's your way to get involved. So your input really matters. Later in the process, when we have our first draft of the plan available, approximately a year and a half from now, we will have a public review meeting as well, a second public forum where we present the information that's been incorporated into the plan, all of the information that we've gathered, and we present that plan to the public for your final review and input. So this may not be your only chance to provide input, but input early in the process is important. So please take the survey, share the survey with your neighbors and friends. We want to generate as much information and as much input as we can. Public participation is critical to this process. So with that, I'll move into a quick description of part two. After I give my presentation, we're going to open it up for comments, input on the floor. And we have a list of several questions that I can ask and that are at the end of my presentation. I have a slide for each of them. And we'll actually work through those questions, have an open discussion, and gather some input from the folks that are here in attendance, as well as folks that are on Zoom. If there's a way or an opportunity for them to participate, we would be happy to have you participate. If there is not, we encourage you to follow up. I'll give some emails that you can contact us to provide information, and all of that is included within the slide. Finally, before I move into it, the presentation will be made available so that it can be posted on the website, and it's being broadcast here. And I imagine a recording of it also be available for further on through the Templeton Community TV. So with that, thank you all for being here. I'm going to share my screen now and move into the presentation. Okay, just a confirmation. Can everyone see That's on Zoom? Perfect. Okay, looks like we have to go ahead here. So, again, welcome, Jeff LeGros with MRPC. Tonight, we're going to be discussing Templeton's Hazard Mitigation Plan update. I've already given some brief introductions and mentioned that the Emergency Management Director is the lead for the town. I'd also like to thank Adam Lamontagne for having us and for leading things here in Templeton, as well as the Hazard Mitigation Working Group. Like I said, it's a large group. I won't mention everyone by name, but I want to thank everyone for their willingness to participate. And again, the Montachusett Regional Planning Commission team, Glenn Eaton, our Executive Director, Karen Chapman, myself, and Ryan Doherty, who's here with me today. We're going to start it right off with the public survey information. I wanted to get this information out. We're kicking off the survey with this public forum. The survey went live today and it's out there and ready to be clicked on and answered and questions answered. So please take a look at the link here on the screen, www.surveymonkey.com/r/Templeton HMP 2023. Click on that link, take the survey, or take a screen capture of the QR code that's at the bottom of the slide. That will work to get you directly to the survey as well. We will be making paper copies of the survey available through places like the town hall, the town library, senior center in Baldwinville, and possibly some other places to be determined. So please look for that and reach out. If you're looking for a paper copy, they can be found in those locations and potentially others, or requested through the Hazard Mitigation Working Group or through the town administrator's office. Would be happy to get you a paper copy and gather that, or have it dropped off at the library or town hall. So the purpose of the hazard mitigation plan is to have a complete, current, and updated plan, one that is qualified and designated by MEMA and FEMA as a certified hazard mitigation community. The plan is valid for 5 years, and it makes the town eligible for certain hazard mitigation grants through FEMA and through MEMA, and most importantly, for disaster recovery funding, as I mentioned earlier. So the process includes the forming of a working group, which we've already done. We've held one kickoff meeting with that working group, and we'll have our next meeting sometime next month. We're hosting a public meeting tonight to inform the public of what we're doing. And we will then be making recommendations to the working group from the public and from MRPC, and jointly we'll submit and we'll compile and prepare and submit a draft report back to the public for review, and then finally out to MEMA and FEMA for their approval and adoption by the town after that fact. As part of that process, in the end, we'll host a second public meeting, and we will incorporate any public comments before we do finalize the plan. So the major components of a hazard mitigation plan include a capabilities assessment, critical facilities assessment or inventory, an evaluation and assessment of flood zones, and an inventory of flood zones, as well as a map, local hazards and vulnerabilities, which hazards are present here in town and which ones are the highest priorities. And we'll also conduct an evaluation of past occurrences and future likelihoods for all hazards. With that, we'll then develop a hazard risk matrix for the town. Again, that's a prioritized listing of the hazards based on their potential impact or their frequency of occurrence here in Templeton. So the plan is specific to the town based on information gathered from the town, by the town, and for the town. Here we have an example of, on the right-hand side, a critical facilities inventory. This comes from the 2015, 2016 plan, the former hazard mitigation plan. We're going to be going through that and updating it to make sure that that inventory, that list is current. And any changes that have occurred since the last plan will be updated. On the left, you see the natural hazards matrix from the 2015 plan. This is how hazards were scored and prioritized as part of the last plan. We'll conduct a similar assessment. It will be a little bit more comprehensive for this plan, and it will bring in climate influence and some of the additional hazards that were identified in the 2021 MVP Community Resilience Building Report that the town of Templeton conducted. So we'll incorporate all recent data into the end, update all of the previous data to come up with a new hazard matrix that will score and prioritize all hazards. A major component of any hazard mitigation plan is an assessment and an evaluation relative to flood zones. Flooding is a critical hazard that occurs frequently in this area. You can see here on the two maps, the FEMA flood zones are shown in red. On the left is the flood zones, mainly following the Otter River and Millers River corridors. And then on the right-hand side, you see those same flood zones with the critical infrastructure for the town shown as points on that map. So one of the most important things to do is to evaluate where critical infrastructure lies. Critical infrastructure being important facilities that may help to either respond to or provide services during a hazard event. If some of those critical infrastructure facilities are located within the flood zone, it's something to really think about. Does that then impact them in the case of a flood or another emergency? And does that prevent them from providing the services they need to, or does that somehow limit their function during an emergency situation? So it's critical to know where critical infrastructure occurs within a flood zone. We're going to make that assessment. We're going to look at it closely. And if there are instances where it occurs, we're going to try to identify strategies and actions to mitigate those occurrences and see, if there's potential to move it outside of the flood zone or provide some type of improvements or mitigations that will make it safer during flooding. So on that same note, as we go through the process and evaluate the hazards, we're also going to identify areas within town where specific or certain hazards have particular impacts over the course of many years or on one single occasion. So whether it's repetitive or it's happened once in the past, if there's been an instance of an impact or there's a location that's high risk, we want to identify that location on the map, and we want to relate it back to what particular hazard or hazards are of risk for that location. And by creating that map, it will help us plan actions or mitigation actions and strategies to address certain hazards. So not just for critical infrastructure, but for any particular town-wide impacts that might occur or risks. These are examples from the 2016 plan. Okay, here we have the hazards from the 2015-2016 plan. We have hazards documented from the 2021 MVP plan. In 2015, for the HMP plan, the previous iteration of this plan, the town of Templeton listed flood-related hazards as number 1, atmospheric and winter weather-related hazards as number 2. That included things like high winds, hurricanes, tornadoes, nor'easters, severe thunderstorms, snow, ice, blizzards, etc. And then third, other natural hazards, which included things like major urban fires, wildland fire, drought, extreme temperatures. And then finally, fourth, geologic hazards. That's things such as earthquakes and landslides. In the 2021 MVP plan, or the Community Resilience Building Plan, extreme precipitation and inland flooding was identified as the number 1 risk, which matched the 2015 HMP plan. So it indicates that, yeah, that really is a major concern here in Templeton. The second one was listed as drought and fire risk. Drought has become more of a concern in recent years than it had been in years past. And even from 2015 until 2021, you can see that the concern for drought has increased. And that makes sense, not only here, but statewide. We've seen some dry years in the recent years, particularly in years like 2016, 2017, even last year, I believe. The state has been in critical and extreme drought multiple times in recent years. The next one that was listed for the MVP plan in 2021 was extreme temperatures, and then finally, extreme weather events, including wind. So we're here today and for the next several months to determine what are today's community concerns. What hazards are important to the community today? Are they different from those in 2015? Have they changed since 2021? Is it a combination of the two? We're going to do a in-depth dive to really figure that out. And part of that information is going to be gathered from you guys, from the public, through the public survey and through any input and feedback we might receive tonight, as well as from the hazard mitigation planning team. Part of what we're going to do for the hazard mitigation plan itself is look at a past history of occurrences of hazards, natural hazards. And we're going to go back for the last 10 to 15 years, and we're going to look at hazards that have occurred here within Templeton. And then we're going to do a real specific assessment for hazards that have occurred since the last plan was adopted in 2016. So we'll look really closely at any hazard events that have occurred in that last, well, I usually say 5-year period, but this plan has been out of date for a couple of years. So from 2021 to 2023, we're, 2 or 3 years. So we're looking at about a 7-year period of time that we're going to really look at any hazard events that have occurred since the last plan was adopted. This timeline goes all the way back, believe it or not, to the 1600s. So while we're going to do an in-depth dive in the last 7 to 10 years, we're also going to include this in the plan just for reference and for historical interest, really. New England has a long history of hazard events and storms, things like earthquakes way back as far as 1638, 1663, that were documented by the early colonists in the Boston and Salem area, earthquakes throughout the 1700s that had some impact that, believe it or not, were documented, so we know about them. Hurricanes throughout history, major flood events like 1936 and 38, a hurricane and flood event in 38, other severe windstorms and hurricanes and flood events, cases of long-term drought, blizzard of 78, wildfire occurrences, general spring flooding like in 2010 and 87 and 2017, where we had local flooding related to spring thaw and the rivers topped their banks and caused localized flooding. The ice storm of 2008, Hurricane Irene flooding, wildfires, severe storms, nor'easters, the winter storm Nemo, Hurricane Sandy. All of those things are documented in the timeline here and are of interest in helping us to understand how hazards might relate and how they might impact the community, but also how the community might be at risk to those particular hazards. So this long timeline is kind of a neat thing that you can look at a little bit more closely here in this presentation and within the plan when it eventually comes out. Now, what can you do at home? You're not just interested, I'm sure, in helping us do this plan. You want to learn a little bit about hazard mitigation and how you can be prepared, how you can make your home safer, your family safer, and things of that nature. September was National Preparedness Month, and FEMA had some great information, and the website ready.gov also has a lot of really great information. So check out ready.gov and look at ways you can make your home or your family safer and do your own part. This plan will help to make the town and the town's infrastructure safer, but there are things you can do within your own home and for your own family to make yourself safer as well. And with that, I want to give a little shout out to Templeton's CERT team, their community emergency response team. Templeton has a fantastic group on their CERT team. They're very active. They have a number of volunteers. They do more and they have more participation than most other communities. They support the fire department in certain cases. They respond to hazard events, and they're also out there for public events and fairs and festivals, things like that. So I just really want to give a shout out, and I want the public of Templeton to know that not every town has that. If you're not already familiar with your CERT team, your community emergency response team, check them out, visit the town's emergency management webpage and learn a little bit about your CERT team. And if you're someone who's interested in that type of thing, maybe it's something you'll reach out to Rich Curtis and get involved. But I really wanted to give a shout out to the town's CERT team as part of this presentation. So with that, we're going to move into natural hazards. And I'm going to give just a brief description of each type of natural hazard and some instances of ways they've impacted or risks that are posed by those hazards here locally in Templeton and in the greater Montachusett region. We'll talk more about specific risks and hazards throughout the plan and throughout the process. So please look forward to that presentation when we finalize the plan. But I just want everybody to be a little bit aware of what they are and what we're talking about here. Flooding is the first one. And this is a map showing the flood zones throughout Templeton. Some of the surrounding communities are included in this map. Flooding can occur along the Millers and Otter rivers in low-lying areas, roadways, as well as in some other low-lying areas or places of runoff throughout town. And we learned firsthand here locally how suddenly that can happen and what the impact can be. Only a few weeks ago, I think on September 12th, when we had that sudden rain event that really impacted Leominster and parts of Fitchburg really hard, but also impacted Templeton, Baldwinville, Gardner, and other parts of the Montachusett region as well. Leominster received over 11 inches of rain in only about an hour and a half's time. And it was just an unbelievable occurrence. And the flooding was almost instantaneous. I was at work at MRPC when it occurred, and I was leaving right as the first emergency warning came out through the cell phones. And by the time I got to the end of the road, water was starting to run across one of the roadways right near our offices in Leominster. I went through that, turned the corner down onto Merriam Ave, and then there was more runoff over the roadway and areas that were flooded out that my vehicle was too low to pass through. Some trucks were still passing through, but traffic became gridlocked instantly. I had to turn around and head back in the direction I came from. And when I drove back by the area I had just left, what was a small stream of runoff coming over the road was now a torrent of water coming over the road, and I was barely able to pass that point. From there, I actually went on beyond and parked Leominster Hospital for a few minutes to let the rain kind of slow down before I started driving again, knowing that the flooding was going to be significant from what I had just seen. I left there about 20 minutes later and went right by the Route 2 spot where Route 12 crosses Route 2. And as all of you are probably aware, Route 2 was literally a pond there at that point, and there were vehicles underwater. There were 5 to 6 feet of water. There was 5 to 6 feet of water on Route 2 at that point. It's hard to believe and hard to imagine. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, I might not have believed it. And I was told that filled up in a matter of 20, 30, 40 minutes, inch by inch. It wasn't something that happened over a course of hours or days. That flooding and that 5 or 6 feet of water came within really just an hour and a half time total. And it became impassable in only about 15 or 20 minutes time. So it can happen suddenly. It can happen quick. Flooding is something very serious and something to be aware of. And something to plan for. So I apologize for that little, offshoot there and telling that story. But it's so recent, so fresh in our memories that it really tells you why this type of planning is important. So with that, I'll just show an example of the Great Flood of 38. And this is, believe it or not, the Millers River in downtown Athol. And yeah, it's it's just unreal. Up over the banks there and into neighborhoods and looking more like an angry ocean than the Millers River we know. So, yeah, it has happened in the past. It has never quite been that bad since, but it could happen again in the future. And being prepared is hugely important. Severe winter storms are another major hazard. Here locally, things like the blizzard of 78, the December 2008 ice storm, Halloween nor'easter of 2011, a 2015 blizzard, the winter storm Nemo 2013. These are just some examples of major blizzards that have caused impact and damages. The picture here on the left was downloaded from city data. A local person, Rebecca Bryson, submitted that picture to them of the upper common area here during the ice storm. And, really the damage from that was just incredible. And I know Templeton experienced some severe damage and in some places worse than other towns and had power outages for approximately a week or more here locally. So again, winter storms are a major concern. Other severe weather, things like tornadoes, hurricanes, extreme wind events, severe thunderstorms are also a major concern. The biggest example is the hurricane of 38, which also caused flooding similar to the flooding of 36. And the path of that storm went right through the heart of southern New England and passed right over our region here. At the time, there's the track here, the historical track, and it's like apparently 6 to 7 p.m. It was passing right over our area, basically followed the Connecticut River Valley, and we really experienced some severe damage here locally. For instance, there was a casualty here in Baldwinville, a 20-year-old gentleman by the name of Anthony Quanzi drowned amidst floodwater and unfortunately wasn't located for several days. So hurricanes and the severe wind are one thing, but the flooding that follows is another thing altogether. Losses in the town here alone were estimated over $100,000, and the Smith and Day Dam collapsed due to the flood. I'm sure that $100,000 in today's dollars is probably several times more than $100,000. Houses were swept away in East Templeton, and that's no joke. Houses were literally swept away due to the dam failure. The Templeton Fish and Gun Club Dam, which also gave way, and another 12 homes in the Otter River area were also abandoned as they were flooded and the roadways were washed out in that area. And that's where the Otter River enters into Baldwinville from Gardner. Another two old dams in that vicinity as well. Another resident of town was trapped and may have been another casualty had he not been rescued by a neighbor who luckily had a rowboat handy and got the two of them out of that area in a rowboat. Finally, the rains began to recede by that Thursday, and the winds abated to the point where curious onlookers were able to come out and observe the damages and rally together as a community and, no doubt help one another out. And that would still happen today, I'm sure. But we learn from events like this, the need to be prepared and to plan. Let's hope we don't get another major hurricane event like that in the near future, but let's also hope that if we do, we're thoroughly prepared for it. Drought, another hazard that I talked about and mentioned, just some examples here and some data of instances of periods of time where the state was in a drought warning or an elevated period of drought as recently as 2021, 2020, 2016 to 17, a level 3 drought, 2010, 27 to 28, and 2001, almost the whole year into January of 23, year and a half. level 2 drought. So you can see that we've had several instances of elevated drought statewide and locally over the last 20 years, and that instances of drought seem to be more frequent than they were historically, with this data stretching all the way back to the late 1800s. Infectious disease and pathogens, pandemic, vector-borne diseases. These things are also natural hazards that more recently with things like COVID-19, major pandemic, we're realizing that we need to prepare for things like that of a major event for health risks, and how we can be prepared, how we can mitigate those risks. I think we've learned a lot from the sudden impacts of COVID-19 and some of the changes that we had to make on such short notice and quickly there. And I think that if a similar virus were to lead to another pandemic like it, we would be much more prepared, I think, than we were just a couple of years ago. So incorporating things like that into the plan are important. And especially, like I said, because we've learned so much and we've made so many positive strides and put so many things into place, that we're prepared for the next one. Wildfire. Along with drought, instances of wildfire have also been increasing. We're going to look at the wildfirerisk.org, and we're going to calculate specific risk for the town of Templeton. Risk in general here in this area compared to the rest of the nation is probably lower, but it's been going up because we've been experiencing more drought than we have traditionally in the past. And then other things like having a railroad line through your town also increases risk of wildfire. And typically one of the areas where wildfire is most likely to occur is along railroad lines. But we're seeing it occurring in other areas more frequently than we have in years past. So including that in the plan and looking at what the actual risk is and looking at areas that might be at higher risk than others is important. So we're going to generate some data specific to Templeton for that. Earthquakes. We don't think of earthquakes as being a major concern here in Massachusetts or New England, but as you can see by the graphic here, the map on the screen that shows instances or occurrences of earthquakes from only 1975 to 2017. And as you can see, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of such occurrences throughout New England, and in particular, a cluster of occurrences in the Northeast Massachusetts area and Southern New Hampshire area. So we do exist upon a fault line. It's not a highly active fault line, and most of the earthquakes that do occur are minor, under a certain magnitude, and as such, magnitude 2 or less than 2, that don't cause any noticeable damage, and oftentimes aren't even felt. But every once in a great while, we do experience a larger earthquake, or more frequently the aftershocks of another earthquake occurring on a larger fault line, say up near the St. Lawrence River Valley along the United States-Canada border, areas like that. So being aware of it and being prepared for earthquakes is important, even though they don't have a high consequence or a high risk for damage here in Templeton. So we'll incorporate that into the plan. The good thing is that today's building codes tend to make buildings more structurally sound and better prepared for minor or even larger earthquakes. So we'll bring in a little bit of the discussions with the building department and some wording related to the new building codes and things like that, and how that relates to mitigating risk. This is just another, this is in table form, looking at earthquakes. That was all earthquakes from the 70s till present. This is all earthquakes that were actually felt within the northeastern United States. So of a large enough magnitude to be felt. And in Massachusetts, that equates to about 400 earthquakes from the period of record way back in the 1600s, like I mentioned earlier, up until 2016. There were approximately 408 earthquakes that we felt. Of those, the only two that really caused any substantial damage were in the early to mid 1700s. And with today's building code standards and things, those damages may not have even been present, or certainly not as drastic. The reported damages from those earthquakes in the 1700s were brick chimneys that came down, slate roofs that gave out when all the slates came off. And as you can imagine, that would cause a lot of damage. Today, we don't have slate roofs, and well, a lot of our homes do have brick chimneys. They're built differently than they were back then. So that's just interesting anyways to know that there were 400 earthquakes that could be felt over that period of time. The next one is invasive plants and insects. And we're going to just talk about things like Oriental bittersweet, mile-a-minute weed, Japanese knotweed, plants like that that are known to be invasive and to spread and to outcompete native vegetation, especially given the importance of native vegetation, trees and shrubs for holding back soil and things like during times like flooding. When you have invasive plants that take over large areas, or in particular hillsides, and those invasive plants don't have a large root structure, they don't hold soil in place, and they unfortunately over time outcompete all of the plants that do have the root structure holding that soil in place. So problems like erosion, runoff, and even worse, landslides can occur if non-native invasive species are allowed to take over in certain areas. So that's not to scare people and say that plants are going to take over the world and cause landslides in everyone's backyard, because we all know that will not happen. But in isolated areas, it could be a concern. So knowing of the concern and knowing where those areas might be and looking at ways to mitigate that is important. Some of the hazards that we're talking about here are climate influenced natural hazards. And as the climate changes, and as some of the frequency or the intensity of some of these climate related hazards increases, some of the risks and impacts may also increase. For instance, flood related hazards, atmospheric and winter weather hazards, and other natural hazards like major urban wildfires, in particular wildfire and drought and extreme temperatures, the potential for or possibility for landslides, things like infectious vector-borne disease and pathogens, and invasive species are all climate influenced natural hazards. We're also going to look at vulnerable populations, and we're going to take any vulnerable populations into consideration. By vulnerable populations, I mean segments of the population that might have social or economic factors that make it more difficult for them to prepare for, respond to, or recover from the impacts of natural hazards. For example, people over the age of 65, people who are disabled, are more susceptible to things like air pollution, particulates associated with wildfire smoke, mold and mildew resulting from flooding. Just in general, the ability to remove themselves from a situation. They may not be driving, they may live alone, things like that that make it harder for them to respond. They may have mobility issues. So we want to be aware of who these vulnerable populations might be, where they might live in any if there's any sort of grouped areas, senior housing areas, things like that. We want to be aware of those areas, and we want to incorporate that into the plan. We want to think about that so that we can plan in a way that mitigates risks and makes it possible to try to assist with those populations should something occur in that area. Again, the CERT team does exactly that. They did it during COVID, making house calls. They've done it during flood events and other things, and they're they're pretty on the ball with that. So I think Templeton is in better shape than some other towns with their ability to reach out and connect with vulnerable populations. So with that, I'm going to be moving into the kind of last part of this presentation today. And this is where we sort of open it up for public input, comments, discussion. I'll read through the next few slides first, just so that I can get these questions out there and so that they're part of the recording for other people who might come back and watch it later. But we can come back to these slides and these questions for discussion. So I'll move through first. And the first question is, what natural hazard events, for example, flooding, icing, extreme temperatures, which events stand out in your mind during the last 5 to 7 years here in Templeton? So we're interested in learning about events that have happened since the last hazard mitigation plan. Second question, what critical facilities or infrastructure, things like roads, bridges, culverts, pump stations, wells, things of that nature, what critical facilities have experienced impacts due to natural hazards in the last 5 to 7 years here in Templeton? Has anything changed with the critical infrastructure? Have they experienced impacts since the last plan? The third question, what changes have you witnessed over the last 5 to 10 years related to hazard events and weather patterns due to climate change? The fourth question, what neighborhoods, natural features, areas, specific locations, new homes, businesses, buildings, developments, or groups of people are most at risk to changing climate and increasing natural hazards? So we want to know about specific locations, areas, certain homes or businesses or neighborhoods, or groups of people that you think might be at risk, not only to natural hazards, but to the influence of changing climate on those natural hazards. Question 5, what if any changes in local priorities have happened during the previous 5 years? This is a question that the town and the Hazard Mitigation Working Group will be able to best answer, but also the opinion of the public is critically important because it helps to inform those priorities for the town and for this plan. So while the town may have different priorities than it did 7 years ago in the previous plan, the public might also recognize some things that should be prioritized higher than others, or that they feel are higher priorities. So we'd like to hear about that. Question number 6. How can this plan be used to increase resiliency to the impacts of changing climate and support the town's recent 2021 Municipal Vulnerability Preparedness Plan, or otherwise known as the Community Resilience Building Report, and its goals and actions? So that 2021 plan listed a set of goals and actions. We want to see how this plan can increase resiliency, can incorporate that MVP plan, and can incorporate some of those goals and actions, or even expand upon them, because if that plan, I think, was put out in early 2021, that means that I think it was prepared during the first year of COVID-19. So we may have learned some things since then, even though it was only 2 years ago. We may have learned some things since that plan. So we're interested in knowing how we can incorporate that plan into this plan, or if there are changes or ways we might want to expand upon some of those goals and actions. And finally, question number 7, what recommendations would you make to the town to better communicate hazard and emergency services and response information to the public? So do you have recommendations that will help the town in responding to hazards and their CERT team, their police and fire, even their DPW, who during times of natural hazards really has a large role in doing things with maintenance of trees and things of that nature? So what recommendations do you have to make the town better prepared and better able to communicate hazards to the public? So with that, we'll come back to those questions, but I just want to wrap it up here. And what are the next steps? So the next steps are gathering data, collecting community and public input, from folks here today, but also by taking the public survey, we want to gather information, updating the maps, updating and revising the recommended projects or actions that are in the previous plan, and then finally putting all of that together into a report, and then presenting that report back to the public approximately a year and 3 or 4 months from now, to present that information back out to the public, hold another meeting just like this, and seek input on the plan that we've come up with for the town. And then finally, once any of those comments have been incorporated, we'll then submit the plan to MEMA for their preliminary review, and then on to FEMA for final review and approval. And then FEMA will send the town a notice to adopt, and the town can then, through their select board, hold one more public meeting, notifying the public that they're adopting the plan that the public has already reviewed and commented on, and that FEMA has approved. So at that time, approximately a year and a half from now, the town will have a current up-to-date plan that will be good for the next 5 years after that point. And that plan will be your plan, because your input will be part of it. So, talking about your input, here's the link to the survey again. There's the QR code to scan. This information will be also made available on the town website, hopefully tomorrow, but Tuesday at the latest, but I think we can probably get it up there tomorrow. The survey did go live today. So it's online and ready for the first person to go on and take the survey. Who will it be? Who will the next 10 be? 20, 30? Oh, awesome. So we already have one taken. This is great news. So there's the link. Please really go on and check it out. You know, I know sometimes with a survey, we have good intention. We say, yeah, I want to take that. And then you forget about it. And a week goes by and then you really forget about it. Don't forget about it. Get on and take it. Share it with your friends and neighbors. It's not a difficult survey. It's kind of fun and easy. It's asking you things about knowledge that you have on these particular hazards, in your opinion. You know, we got a lot of people out there that you know, follow these things, and that, you know, a storm is big news here in New England. You know, it's something to talk about at the diner, and it's something to think about. And so we're hoping that there'll be some interest in taking this survey. And speaking of talking about it at the diner, again, share it with your friends and neighbors, spread the word about the survey. Templeton's not one of the largest towns in the region, but I know they're one of the most active towns when it comes to emergency services and emergency response. And so we're really hoping to get a good number of survey results here, and to really inform that plan. So please go on and take it. With that, I'm going to wrap it up. And if there are any, we're going to move into questions and comments and open discussion if there are any. If there are not, refer back to these slides. It will be made available multiple places. Refer back to these slides and those questions, and please reply. Send us your comments and feedback to the Emergency Management Director, Rich Curtis. His email is listed here at the bottom, and copy myself at MRPC. My email is also listed right below his. So if you do have comments and feedback and you're not able to provide them today, or you think of them after, please reply by email and submit those comments to us, and go on and take the public survey. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to now open it up for any input that we might have, and I'm going to scroll back up to these questions in case anyone wants to refer to any of the questions.
Is the slide that we just saw with a link on, is that going to be at the town website? Is it already there?
No, we just went live with the survey today. We're announcing it at this meeting, but it will be on the town website now that it's announced and gone live. You know, probably we think could get up there probably tomorrow. Is that possible, or would it be Tuesday because of the? Yeah, at the latest Tuesday. We have a Friday with, you know, different staff times and a holiday on Monday. But the survey will be up through the website by Tuesday, and it is available now. So if you're hearing about it, you know about it, you won't really have to wait for it to get posted on the town website. But we do hope on the town website we'll get more people that know about it. But it is active, so feel free to follow that link or scan the QR code and go to it. It's ready to go.
Is it free to push out in public through social media?
Yes, please. That's the other thing that I didn't mention. If there are any formal channels and other town social, social media websites and things like that, sites, feel free to put it out through your local department or board or group locations too. Feel free to share it on social media. It's a public survey. It's not limited only to Templeton residents, but one of the questions does ask if you're a resident, and a little bit deeper than that, it asks your zip code. We don't ask that. We're not gathering any personal identifying information. Taking the survey doesn't give us any of that. We don't know who you are, or nor do we want to, but we do want to know where you're located, because that helps us to better understand some of your responses, because certain hazards might impact certain areas or parts of town more than others. So that's why we ask that question. And we also ask it for people that take it that are not a resident. And I think one of the questions asks if you're not a resident, maybe you work in Templeton or whatever. So we try to get at some of that. But we encourage people to take it. We know Templeton's part of a shared school district with Phillipston. We encourage Phillipston residents to take it too if they have some thoughts and input, because you do share a school system with them. So there's some overlap and concern. Yes, next
For
question.
the paper copies of the survey, will you provide them, or is it administered, and what's the mechanism for getting this back?
So we'll be able to provide them and print them out. The town can print them out at any time too. When we provide the town with the information, we'll also give them a PDF so that they'll have a PDF of the survey so that you can print out more. But we're happy to print out 20 to 30 copies for each location that we put it out at to start. And if you need us to print out more, we can. Or if you have the PDF, you're welcome to print out more and keep it stocked. We have a survey box that we'll give you. We'll have one here for town hall, for the library, and the senior center for sure. So those are three known locations where the survey will be available, with a survey box that MRPC will provide for gathering and collecting those surveys. And we'll tape one of our business cards to the bottom of the box, so that if you do need more printouts, or if your survey box is full and you want us to come pick them up, just look on the bottom of the box and you can get in touch with us, and we'll do that. I know a lot of people do prefer to look at it and take it by paper, and we want to make sure it's available to them. So we'll have it out at those 3 locations, and we're open to more suggestions. We have several more boxes, so we can put it out at more locations too, if the town knows of some spots where they think it'll get a good participation. Or if there's an event going on and you want to have us give you a box to have at that particular event, you can do that too. Yep. So
Mike, I put the link in the live chat for the meeting we're in right now. So if people are watching, they can just click right on that link.
that's great to know. So yeah, so the link went into the live chat for the Zoom here. So if you're on with us live right now, you can access it directly there as well.
Jeff, did you have a sign-in sheet for tonight?
No, we didn't do one, but we will do one before we depart here. We can Ryan can put that out right now. Actually, I have a notebook here, and just we have a good attendance here. About 12 people here in attendance right here in person at town hall. So
Sorry, we want me to set it up. Sorry, yes.
yeah, so we'll make sure everybody signs in, name and affiliation. And I think we might be able to get a list of those who registered for the online chat if we need it, but not critical. Yeah, so that's a good point. We'll make sure everybody that is here today signs in, and any questions that are asked or that anybody wants to follow up with, we can, take note, or you can email us. Would anybody like me to work through those 7 questions again? And does anybody have any thoughts or information, or is that something you'd want to think about? And all right, go ahead. We have a couple here.
Regarding the extensive list of hazard examples you went through, has
thought of to include a rep.
Well, what we're doing here is called a natural hazard mitigation plan. So we're looking at natural hazards, things like weather events, flooding that is a result of weather events, things of that nature. Things like that, terrorism and shootings are a real concern, but they're addressed in other types of plans and other types of public safety and emergency management planning and things like that. They are not addressed in the FEMA hazard mitigation plans, but it is a good point and, something to always be aware of and prepared for as well. But no, they're not a part of the hazard mitigation planning.
We have a significant public event coming up at the end of the month, Warrior Fest over in Narragansett. And there'll be a lot of members of the public there. So I was wondering, would you be able to set up a booth there, or should we try to arrange to have one of our own?
So we are happy to participate and to staff a booth at that event. It's a big part of connecting with the public. As much as a planner, a couple of things I always say, I really want and hope that people are reading the plans that we write, right? But we know in a lot of cases, they end up going on a shelf. We're doing our best to make these plans interesting and meaningful so that they don't. The other thing is we hold these public outreach meetings, right? We want people to come to the meetings. We want to connect with them, but we also know that not everybody is going to come to a public outreach meeting. So part of that public outreach often brings us to different town events and things, because sometimes that's a better way to connect with a larger amount of people than at a formal meeting or forum. So yeah, we're happy to do that. And if you guys want to do it, set it up, maybe the town has one and we're present there with you, or if someone from the CERT team wants to be there, the emergency management.
Team have their hands full. We're doing all the traffic direction.
Okay, so we're happy to do it. MRPC will come out. I'll come out with one of our other planners probably, and we can set up a table where we can actually put out any information that brochures or things that the CERT team might have, some brochures and info that we have from FEMA and readiness and things like that. So that we're not just talking about this plan. We can give some good information out to the public while we're there. But yeah, we'd love to have that opportunity to connect with the public.
When's fall town meeting? That's coming up. November 15th is fall town meeting in high school. Middle school.
So what we need is someone from the town who's responsible for those two events or whatever, that can follow up with us on that. So one of them's a school event, one of them's the annual town meeting. We'd be happy to do a small table at both of those, or if the town meeting is pretty full with other things, even just putting out a survey box in the back for that particular event, things like that. But would be happy to staff it as well and have a planner there with the survey box to answer any questions people might have. Yep. So definitely, if you could, someone from the town administrator's office, maybe put us in touch with the right person for both of those events. We'll do that. We'll up with that on Tuesday too. Another question?
I'm not sure how to phrase this, but has there been an increase, or is there a chance or risk of, what is the risk of stormwater runoff and flooding infiltrating public and private wells? Is that a new thing, or is that anything?
Well, I don't know if that's an increased risk here in town. I guess that's something we'll have to discuss, but flooding is more common at certain times than it has been. We've had instances of flooding that have been a concern.
Well,
But
that water carries bacteria, so if it's
Yeah.
areas where people have private wells, is that something that?
well, as of yet, even though we've seen more frequent flooding and more flood events, we haven't really seen any expansion to the flood zones or to the floodplains. So there's not, we're getting more high frequent events, and we're getting higher magnitude events, more 100-year storms and things like that. But if those areas weren't previously impacted, it's not necessarily the case that they would be impacted now. But if there are areas that are close to a flood zone or within the 500-year flood zone, and they haven't been impacted in the past, there's a chance that they could be in the future if they're within the flood zone. So that's something to look at and think about. And do you ask the question because you know of areas where that's a concern, or?
It's just new thinking.
Yeah.
In my part, we have, there's a landfill and there's the Otter River, and then there's wells along the Otter River that, even if it's just the Otter River and flooding, I mean, there's a lot of bacteria in floodwater, it picks up. That's why we poop, scoop poop and all that stuff, but
Right.
it's still animal.
Right.
And
Yeah, well,
needles now in some locations.
yeah,
You don't know what's in floodwater.
yeah. And I know the state monitors all their swimming areas, right? And in recent
Right.
years, they've had higher bacteria levels in a lot of their, the DCR swimming areas that are monitored for water quality. And that's due to the runoff over land and things like that, and increased bacteria levels, even beavers, increased beaver activity and other things. But yeah, it's something to think about. So as part of this, that's a good point to note, knowing where the wells are located, the public drinking water wells, and areas around that where the flood zones currently exist, and where the differences between the 500 and the 100, and looking at development in both of those areas, not just the 100-year, to make sure that certain impacts like that are mitigated, so that they don't.
Amherst, their sewage plant, Amherst, just overflowed in the Mill River. There was a big, it shut down. My daughter sent me an article about that. I know we have a sewage plant here. I mean, Templeton is great.
Yep.
They have MS4, the catch basin cleaning. They sent out notices about, why you clean up after your pets through the electric bill, trying to educate the public.
Yep.
But I don't know if we've even ever considered, because our sewer plant is run so well, if we've ever even considered something like what just happened in Amherst where I can get the article where this,
Yeah, I'm aware of it. I actually read that myself. I did. And other people might, be interested in looking it up or whatever, but that did just occur. And I think it was from a period of higher water and more water flow than it could handle. So yeah, that's something to think about and to plan for, right? And be prepared. But you
we've never
mentioned,
had to think about it before, but we do have a sewer.
yeah, and especially when you look at the amount of rain that fell just a few weeks ago in Leominster in a short period of time,
Right.
had that, here it was considerably less, 5-6 inches of rain. But had that been 11 inches throughout the entire region, then yeah, there could have been, excuse me, it could have been greater impacts like that.
Jeff, the sewer department and the water department are part of this work group just for that reason. So if there are issues, they can bring them up.
Yep, good point. Yep. Excuse me. All right, any other questions? Yes.
I just also wanted to recognize youth productions, TCTV, they did a great job with that public messaging video. So I want to recognize their work, and they also put it on their they do their report for the town, as well. But I do want to make note, because I was participating in the BP work group, and we have a lot of the same people in this group. And we certainly have a great amount of knowledge that they bring to the table. That worked out exceptional for the town. I'm not sure, Jeff, but working with the water department, who secured the over $500,000, who put in a whole new culvert for at a site, that access to a public water supply.
Wow.
So that was huge for the town of Templeton. But I think this would be very productive having this team here, because they bring a great skill set to the table. And, Rich Curtis is one that went above and beyond to make sure to get this grant. So I also want to recognize him for his work, and also the select board for doing the matching funds at the time, bringing that in the water.
Yeah, thank you guys for putting in that hard work, all across the board. I know the community television did a really neat promo ad for this meeting. You know, and that type of thing is, it was an idea that came out of the first working group meeting. It was a great suggestion. It was something new and a way to promote it. I liked it. I thought they did a great job. And yeah, I applaud you guys for the efforts and for that grant and implementing that MVP plan. It was clear to us, after the first meeting, seeing the participation level, and everybody on that working group team, but we knew, you guys putting forward a good team, it was gonna help to create a good plan. So yeah, that shows. So yeah, thank you.
And we also have the chair of the select board here. Sorry. Who, I wanted to recognize, because you actually you finished your master's in this field, particularly. That's why I was said the skill set, not just the whole group, but including the chair. Yeah, before, so.
It was actually one of the questions on that, it was, what, if any, changes in local priorities and needs have occurred within the last 5 to 7 years? I think we put it in overdrive. I think the team in town really came together to try and push certain things forward, whether it was physical, working down at your garage. Rich and I worked for our comprehensive emergency management plan, which is on the website. And I'd like to see like a lot of these things get put on the emergency management website. So some of the past documents, so people have a chance to review them. But a lot of things have happened in emergency management within the last 5 to 7 years.
That's great to know. And if you would be willing to, with the stakeholders and even as breakout groups with the core team members, would like to conduct some interviews and gather that type of information.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't be at the kickoff.
All right. No, I'm glad. Thank you for introducing, and we would look forward to sitting down with you and learning about some of those things. And you mentioned something really important that we incorporate as part of our planning process. It's a recommendation that we make, and it's better to do it early rather than late, but it comes in as an action. But we've started to say, why are we putting this in as an action? Let's do this with the working group, creating a hazard mitigation planning webpage that can be, information can go on throughout the planning process. And that's the same thing that, we're looking to do here. There's already a good webpage for the emergency management. But I think we're working to create a landing page specifically for this plan. And we can put links to related plans out from that. And it can be a place where the public comes to get information throughout this process. But even after the plan is available, it can be directly linked from the emergency management page. But it can be a place where emergency management and hazard mitigation plans are right there, and other information for the public, things like where to sign up for emergency notifications, code red, that type of thing. It can have things like that. Those already exist on the emergency management page, but this can be just another source where you can dig a little deeper into hazard mitigation and things the town is doing if the public's interested in it. So it's a good opportunity to take the meat of this plan, to get it out there and put it on a web page in an interactive way.
And then promote it, because that last question you have, and how will it increase Templeton's resiliency to the impacts of climate change? We do, as the metaphor goes, you can lead the horse to water, right? But you can't make him drink, or her.
Yep.
So if we gather all these things in this effort right now, this hazard, the mitigation plan, once you have it to do something with it, and one of the things that you were talking about, Jeff, having some kind of, I thought symposium, but symposium sounds boring. So, I don't know, pizza party, whatever you want to call it, but actually have an annual event where you wind up. We used to do touch a truck, right? Where you would have everyone come in behind the school and they'd see the CERT truck, they'd see fire trucks or otherwise, but have an event where you're able to hand out materials or ask people if they've done,
National Play Outside Day.
What?
National Play Outside Day in the morning, and Candy has all the windows.
Right, but I mean, I wanted to be like first and foremost, not just a booth that people might go to, but actually have an event. So people, ready.gov, I think does a really good job.
Yeah.
They've got the money to be able to put stuff out there. We want our own little ready.gov or Templeton Ready kind of outreach to the community. Because again, we have our meetings, I don't know, TCTV, how many people are watching right now?
I don't have it up right now, but I'll check in.
Okay, we usually have about 10 people watching, maybe half, maybe an equal number on television.
Mhm.
We have nearly 8,000 residents, between 8,000 and 9,000 residents, to get the word out for people that just don't have the time, their government isn't, falling apart. They're not gonna pay attention, so how do you get that kind of information out once you've done all this hard work to be able to say, here's how we do this, or here's how you write a plan. My daughter and I were talking before the meeting. I do have an emergency action plan.
Yeah.
I created it because I was about ready to deploy to Afghanistan, but it's that thought, what do you do? Where is the oil power cutoff switch in the house, or why is that there? To be able to answer these questions, if it hits the fan, if you do get that, I was stuck on Route 2
Yeah.
for that flood, so I had a lot of time to listen to scanner radio and everything else that was happening. But that happens. There's a movie on Netflix about the campfire fire. People had zero warning to be able to get out of there, and they were driving through flames. So to be able to have something or help the residents be able to build something themselves to say, I feel a little bit more ready to deal with a winter storm.
Yeah.
Or I didn't think to carry a get home bag in my car, something like that. So I'm very excited about this process because I think you're gonna reveal the seams and allow us to be able to say, we didn't focus on that before, but now I think we have the opportunity, or we have the right people. Like you said, our CERT team is amazing. And to be able to, unleash them with even better tools is pretty exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you just nailed it. One of the reasons why I put that ready.gov slide up is as I started, in the beginning of the presentation, when I started to get into it, because here's a plan for the town to be prepared, right? But here's an opportunity to connect with the people of the town about hazard mitigation preparedness. And I think that's a big part of it. And even if it's not a main element in the plan, there's no reason why we can't make it an element within Templeton's plan, and why Templeton can't make that part of its mission with a web page and with an event. Maybe it's an event every September, during National Readiness or Preparedness Month. And I know this year the theme was preparedness for older adults. And so they had a whole guidance document and a preparedness kit and tool kit things for older adults and seniors. Ready.gov has a general one for the home, and so having a plan is important. And I realized the same thing with that flood just a few weeks ago, being in Leominster when it happened, that it happens quick, and that no one's prepared, and that people don't know how to react or what to do. And I parked at Leominster Hospital. I mentioned it because I knew it was high and dry, and I knew it was a good place to sit. But I was amazed that nobody else was in the parking lot. The few people that were, everybody was getting out of there. And I had already been in both directions. So I knew that wherever they were going, the only way out of there was bringing them to an area that was already flooded. So really the right thing for them to do to not become part of that gridlock would have been to stay right there where they were. But the first thing everybody thinks of is, I got to get out of here. I got to get home, And I think that this type of planning and this type of discussion makes people aware of it ahead of time. Because in the moment, if you're not already aware, you don't have a plan already, you won't know how to react, you panic, yeah.
You make decisions that are based on your fight or flight. You know, I saw dozens of abandoned cars, of people that panicked and did not want to be a part of that. They shut off all northbound traffic, so everything went into the center of Leominster. You watch tractor trailers. Lots of tractor trailers trying to negotiate in flood streets. But it's a good scenario to be able to say it can happen.
Yep.
And you're going to need to be able to know what to do, make a decision, or at least know who or when to ask for help.
Yep.
Have you guys heard of crew communities responding to extreme weather? So that you can join as an individual or you can form your own. It's, almost, it's not the same as CERT. It's just more of teaching, like they said, they reached out to seniors. So my daughter runs hers through her library group and has one a year. She just does one a year, but that's when people can come and ask their questions and get their information on what to do down on Cape Cod in extreme weather, because it's different challenges in different areas.
No. Interesting. No, I haven't heard of it. I'll
Said
take a look
it's
at
a
it.
network of local leaders building grassroots climate resilience through inclusive and hands-on education, service and planning.
No.
They work to equip families and communities with the resources and capacity to prepare and respond to local climate changes equitably, sustainably, and collaboratively.
Great. Yeah, so
A select board member from Leominster, she didn't get home till 11
Yeah.
PM that night. She got trapped.
Yep, I saw it. It was really crazy. And like I said, I wouldn't have believed it. I would have believed it, but I wouldn't have realized the extent of it had I not seen it myself. And it would have been a lot harder to believe, but having seen it, it was, and I'm someone who's familiar with hazard planning and these types of events and occurrences and knows about them, flood control and everything. And it was still shocking to me, so it can happen quick. And it's great that we're working here to have a plan in place. The other thing I mentioned is that there's an excitement or an interest in weather. I think about my grandfather sitting at the diner with his old buddies, and they'd talk about the weather and the storm and it's coming in or whatever, the last thunderstorm that happened. And, so there's an interest in it and, there's a reason to communicate with other people about it, right? And to share these stories and experiences because it helps us to prepare for that next one, and also, in times like that, if you're alone, you're in trouble, you rely on each other and other people. So a group of people knowing how to do the right thing in a town being prepared and planning to do things to mitigate risks puts you in a much better place. So I like hazard mitigation planning. Yeah.
Discussions, even having a wool blanket in your trunk if you get stuck, like the blizzard of 78, people were stuck like 2 weeks.
Yep. So I encourage everybody, is there any interaction with the people who are on? Can they add comments? Are there any comments in the chat, their questions or anything?
They can add YouTube comments, but as of right now, we don't have anything, and we do have the survey in the comments, and we can add it to the description of our YouTube.
Perfect. So that's that. I encourage people then to go in and take the survey. The link is in the chat. And it's already getting out there in some places on social media. It's live, it's available.
We have 2 responses.
We already have 2 survey responses. So who's going to be number 3? Lucky number 3. Yeah, we're, yeah. So, all right. Sound like I'm starting to run a bingo show. So with that, I'll wrap it up because other people might have other things to get to. Speaking of bingo, but I really want to thank everybody for 1, being here in person, 2, being here online and tuning in, and 3, for following up and and viewing the recording at a later time, and for providing any input now or later, and for going on and taking the public survey. So thank you all. Thanks to everybody who was here today, and thanks to the public out there for participating and helping us make a great plan for the town.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.